I was the champion of Kunlun, and this was my destiny, as it had been yours, to seize the power of the dragon, to plunge my hands into his molten heart, to change them into things like unto iron. Today on the Comic Book Report, the Immortal Iron Fist and the Immortal Weapons Omnibus. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today we're reviewing another Marvel Omnibus. This time we're talking about Iron Fist and the Immortal Weapons. This was released, I believe, last year in 2023. And it's a bit unusual. It's not quite a reprint, but it's not quite a first release. It is a first release in this form. Basically, they did release an Immortal Iron Fist omnibus, but it didn't include everything that's included in this book. As far as what's included, I'll get to that along with my review in a minute, but first I'd like to shout out the channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you to check out their website. You can find a link for it in this video's description, and if you see anything on the site you like, you can use my discount code at checkout, The Comic Book Report, to receive $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's probably the best way to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's go ahead and get started with this Marvel Omnibus review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written primarily by Ed Brubaker, Matt Fraction, and Dwayne Stravinsky, along with others, and it was penciled primarily by David Aja, Travel Foreman, and many more. The comics in this volume were published by Marvel Comics beginning in 2006. As far as what this omnibus collects, it includes the Immortal Iron Fist issues 1 through 27, along with Annual 1. This omnibus also includes Immortal Iron Fist, Orson Randall and the Green Mist of Death, Immortal Iron Fist, The Origin of Danny Rand, Immortal Iron Fist, Orson Randall and the Death Queen of California, Immortal Weapons issues 1 through 5, Immortal Weapons Sketchbook, and material from Civil War Choosing Sides and I Am an Avenger issue 1. Now this is an oversized hardcover edition with glossy print paper stock, a sewn binding, and a total of 1,048 pages. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's a look at the cover for our omnibus today. I'll say right at the top, this is the direct market edition for this omnibus. I'll go ahead and throw up a thumbnail of the standard edition cover for this omnibus as well, just so you can compare them and see. I'm personally a fan of both covers for this omnibus, though I am pretty happy for this direct market. The only other differences in these collections based on the cover is also the image on the bottom of the spine. And speaking of the spine here, we have the Marvel Omnibus logo, we have the Immortal Iron Fist with all the cool stylization, and the Immortal Weapons here for this omnibus as well, some of the creators, and then this picture of the Iron Fist at the bottom. I think for the standard edition cover, we have Iron Fist kind of meditating or something, but again, other than that image on the bottom of the spine and the front cover of the dust jacket, I think everything in both editions should be identical. But again, that is for this Iron Fist and the Immortal Weapons omnibus, not to be confused with just the Immortal Iron Fist omnibus, which just included, I believe, that Ed Brubaker and Matt Fraction era. Back cover here, of course, is also really stylized and interesting. We have blurbs about the book, description, pricing information, age rating, and this cool picture of Iron Fist. The T+ parental or reading rating, I think, definitely holds up. This is definitely a more mature kind of read, a lot of action, violence, some kind of sensual content, things like that. I don't think there's any outright nudity. There is kind of a monstrous, kind of topless creature at one point, but nothing too gruesome. But again, reader discretion advised. At any rate, as you can see, we've done one final look at this dust jacket, spreading out the interior flaps so you can just see everything at a glance. Again, I'm a huge fan of the cover design here. I also think the standard edition is quite striking. I think the graphic designers and everything here did a fantastic job. Under the dust jacket on the hardback book itself, we have this beautiful art print here. We have a couple just interesting kind of evocative images from throughout the collection, some kind of just cool little features or facets of the Iron Fist lore. I love that it's a predominantly yellow book with some other kind of detail work. Again, it just looks really fascinating. I easily don't have any other collections that look quite like this, and I think overall the design work for this book in particular should be commended. Really beautiful stuff here. And now that we've finished our look at the exteriors of this omnibus, I did want to spend a moment to examine this book's binding. And I'm happy to say my copy at least was extraordinarily well bound. We have a beautiful eye in this collection. I think overall the pages laid very flat, very little gutter loss. Overall, could not have been happier with this binding. Very, very satisfied. Really well done marvel here with this book. Okay, and now that we finished up our look at the binding, we can go ahead and break into the collection proper. And after a beautiful set of green end pages, we jump right into a title page, followed by the 2-page kind of creator breakdown spread. We also have the publication information on these pages as well. But this is a beautiful look at this book. I love the formatting we get with the interstitials here. I think even this layout of creators looks amazing. We do have this in lieu of a proper table of contents, so no, we don't have like a numbered table of contents, but we have a breakdown of everything that's included in this book and who created what. After that, we jump into a couple pages of the Marvel Civil War kind of choosing sides, where we have Danny Rand masquerading as Daredevil during this time before switching back to his Iron Fist garb. And then after that, we jump right into that Iron Fist run from Ed Brubaker, Matt Fraction, and in parts by David Aja. This is a really, really fun book. I'm trying to think of even how far back to go with this. Essentially, this is a run I've heard about for a long time. I am a fan of Ed Brubaker. I love what he did with Daredevil. I like some of his other kind of criminal-based stuff as well that I've read. But I always heard that he had the definitive run on the Immortal Iron Fist. And this is a character I've always wanted to read more about. I had an opportunity to read the Danny Rand Early Years Omnibus, I think last year. I really enjoyed that as well. I think I reviewed it on the channel if you're interested. But this is a character I've seen pop up in a lot of Marvel books, especially a lot of Marvel kind of street level character books or Marvel events, and I've always been interested in him. I watched some of the Netflix series and I even enjoyed some of that, but this was the run I knew. This was like the real meat and potatoes. This is the one that everyone just talked about and had so many accolades, so it was on my to-read list forever. I honestly can't say how many times I almost picked up some issues of this in trade paperback, but for whatever reason I just never quite got there. And when I heard they were reprinting this omnibus and they were adding more content in the form of the Immortal Weapons kind of series and some of those issues for one big expanded Immortal Iron Fist reading experience, it was definitely something I was interested in. In fact, at the end of 2023, the only 2 omnibuses I really wanted to pick up that year that I didn't have a chance to do was this and the Venom Omnibus by Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman. So right in the new year when I saved up money, the first 2 omnibuses I bought, you guessed it, Venom by Donny Cates and this Immortal Iron Fist book. And I'm so happy to say I finally finished reading it. Yes, I've been off and on with this book all year, but it was a rewarding experience. So what is this book about? What can we expect? Well, I'm happy to tell you. Essentially, we go deep into the Iron Fist lore, into the world of the Immortal Iron Fist. I'll say right here too, I think this run is exceptional for new readers. Does it reward longer-term fans of this character? Will it help to know some of his supporting cast and his history? Yeah, sure, we definitely get inklings of that, but I think that Brubaker, Fraction, and team do a good job of relaying the pertinent information you need to enjoy this book. And in fact, I actually think that this is a really good singular reading experience. I'm not sure which review is going to come out first, but I recently recorded the Black Panther by Ta-Nehisi Coates omnibus review, and I feel very similar about that run in that book as well, where you can kind of read this as more or less a one-and-done kind of omnibus. I think that the runs we have included are so complete in the storytelling that I didn't really need a ton before this, and I don't necessarily need a ton after this. I was very satisfied with what we got here, and I'm really happy to say that. This is a really fun read. It did help, though, that I had read the Early Years Omnibus. I knew a bit more about the character before I ventured into this book, but I don't necessarily think that's necessary. For those that are just newly initiated to this character, the Immortal Iron Fist was a boy who ventured into, I think, the Himalayas with his parents as his father was seeking this kind of mythical city. He was betrayed by his business partner and he fell to his death. His mother and him were kind of lost in the snow at the top of this mountain, and then a pack of wolves came to try to devour them. The mother sacrificed herself so her young son Danny could presumably get away. Eventually, he was found by monks and taken to this city called Kunlun. It's a sort of mystical city that is not even in our plane of existence, but it crosses over with Earth once every 10 years. And that's the window in which the young boy Danny gets taken into that city. He's raised in this environment and trained in the arts or martial arts of this community. And ultimately, he becomes their kind of chosen one figure, the Immortal Iron Fist, one of the immortal weapons. He does this by plunging his fists into the molten heart of Shao Lao the Undying, this kind of wild dragon. He brands himself with the dragon's kind of heart symbol on his chest, and after he plunges his fists into the molten heart, they become like unto a thing of iron. What does that mean? Basically, his fists will glow and become super strong. He also has kind of meditative healing abilities to a degree, and he's super proficient in martial arts and kind of acrobatics, things like that. He's a trained weapon and kind of a chosen one figure. Because he's also a New York kid, but he was raised in Kunlun, he's kind of a man of two worlds, and he feels responsibility for both. We know that he's been a long-time street-level hero and has a really good friendship with characters like Luke Cage, Misty Knight, Colleen Wing, and more. In this book, he has kind of a romantic relationship with Misty Knight, which is something that's developed on throughout the run as well. But essentially, this book does a cool thing by expanding the lore of Iron Fist. We have it honoring old traditions, but we also have it adding many more spokes to the wheel. It does this in two ways that I can think of right from the jump. It basically gives us more Iron Fist characters. What do I mean by that? We get the history of so many of the other Iron Fists that had the mantle before Danny Rand, and in some cases a couple after him when we have future kind of narratives. In addition to that, we also have this kind of martial arts tournaments where all the other kind of celestial mythical cities send their champions, the other immortal weapons, to fight, and then these characters become kind of key characters for the back half of this omnibus, especially as we crest into that immortal weapons era. But these characters also add another great, like I said, layer or spoke to the wheel of this Iron Fist lore that previously didn't exist. I would not call this run derivative, but I would say it plays on kind of some genre or archetypal notes. You know, I don't think it's unfamiliar to see these kind of mythical martial arts kind of narratives where we have this kind of forbidden tournament. It feels very kind of Mortal Kombat-y in a way, or if you're a fan of anime or manga, I think of like the Dark Tournament from Yu Yu Hakusho. That was a great 90s anime for me. But anyway, there's definitely elements of that I see in this run, but it feels very unique to the Marvel Universe, at least for me, and I had a blast with it. Like I said, I'm used to reading Brubaker in kind of the detective-y kind of street crime kind of comics, or in some cases characters like Daredevil, and so I do think that reading Iron Fist was a little bit of a different move for him from stuff I've read of Brubaker at least, but it still played enough with a lot of his genre that I think it really worked. But I also got to see some range in Brubaker I don't often see. I love that he was paired with Matt Fraction, who in my mind is a huge underrated Marvel writer. I love what he did in the pages of things like Hawkeye, Fantastic Four. I even enjoyed his Thor run, and I think the fact that his Invincible Iron Man doesn't have a proper omnibus is just wild to me. Hopefully we see that from Marvel in the coming years. But those two together at the helm really had a strong start to this run. I think in many ways that is the most kind of well-regarded portion of this run or this omnibus, is that period where Ed Brubaker and Matt Fraction are both on this book. I will say the art from David Aja we get primarily in the front of this book was also amazing. I'm only really familiar with his art in the pages of Hawkeye, but I think we got so many other styles from him in the pages of Immortal Iron Fist that I'm kind of blown away. This book has not only a ton of writers, especially once we get past that early few arcs from Brubaker and Fraction, but it has so many artists. I will say it changes hand a few times, and not every artist hit in the same way that others maybe did throughout this book, but overall I still think that this was a really well illustrated book as well. But yeah, going back to the story for a moment, we go through kind of the history of some of the Iron Fists, and we go into detail with this character that was the Iron Fist immediately before Danny Rand, and this is the character of Orson Randall. We find this kind of mysterious figure in the early arc, and we have him kind of explaining some of his backstory, his ties to Danny Rand's father, and his legacy as an Iron Fist. We have him now kind of down on his luck, older, he's gun-toting, he's been, through it all. He was sort of a drug addict for a while, and he's just a really charismatic and mysterious, interesting character, and we actually get to learn more about him throughout this run, even after he, does pass away in the earlier arc of this book. But we get to see stories of him survived in Friends and in his journals, and we have issues or one-shots that are just adventures he had when he was a younger Iron Fist, so you definitely feel his presence throughout a lot of this run, and I just think it was a really fun thing to do to give us these other Iron Fists, and especially Orson Randall. Now, what do I mean about other Iron Fists? Well, in addition to these flashback narratives that have these little adventures of previous Iron Fists like Orson Randall, we go through much more than just him. We have male and female Iron Fists from throughout the last couple thousand years. We have them defending cities or being their champions, and we have a lot of different styles. We have one guy toward the end of this book that's kind of the pacifist Iron Fist. How does that even work? But I really thought that this was a cool wrinkle to just give us this kind of breadth of mythology for the Iron Fist universe, and I think it was really well done. After that early arc with Orson Randall, we do have Iron Fist kind of drawn into this tournament. Yes, there are other kind of twists and turns along the way, but these are kind of the broader strokes, bigger story points throughout this book. He's drawn into this tournament in Kunlun. Meanwhile, there's a lot of kind of political conspiracy happening in the city of Kunlun itself. We think there's corruption at the top levels of government. We have Iron Fist trying to basically help kind of an uprising or rebellious group fighting in this tournament, trying to find mysteries. And in the midst of all of this, we have, I think, Hydra and some other people trying to find a portal into Kunlun from Earth, and it's just really interesting and layered. I really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, I think the first couple arcs of this book were maybe some of the strongest, and I think some of the last couple with the Immortal weapons were also quite strong. There's some stuff in the middle that might be a little bit over extended or bloated in some parts, but overall, this was really a fascinating read. I think if you're a fan of this genre, the kind of mystical martial arts kind of book, mix that with some street level vigilantism, and this is a real run for you. I'm not going to go into every story and every spoiler in this book, because frankly, there's just so much to cover and talk about that I just don't have time to cover everything. But again, some of my favorite highlight bits from those early arcs, again, I love the character of Orson Randall. I love that we get to feel his presence throughout this book, and I really enjoyed that kind of tournament with all the other Immortal weapons. I think that this is also a really fascinating period, because we get to see all these other aspects that are beyond Kunlun, but are still kind of in this martial arts mysticism, and it just adds this extra nuance to the Marvel Universe I didn't know I needed. The different champions or Immortal weapons are also really diverse. They're not all like Iron Fist. There's not like an Iron Foot running around. It's not that derivative. These characters are really unique. We have this kind of Bride of Nine Spiders, I think she's called. We have the orphan something. There's so many different ones that are really fascinating. I don't want to spoil it, but how they all fight, how they interact with each other, it's all just really well done. We get some mystery around some of the characters too. But ultimately, the tournament kind of resolves. We have a lot of these characters kind of fighting for freedom, and we ultimately have Danny Rand, the Iron Fist, kind of befriend them in many ways. Not too long after the tournament, we have a new kind of government established with the Thunderer over there in Kunlun, and we have Danny return to New York for all intents and purposes, and we find his home life a bit more volatile than he expected. He tags up with his romantic interest, Misty Knight, who has her own agency and things going on that I really liked. I think she's a really great character and a really good romantic partner for Danny Rand. We have things with his company going in all sorts of different ways, and we have him trying to settle back into this world that, again, just doesn't feel like all there is to him. Being a man of both worlds, he almost doesn't fit in either in some ways, and we get to explore kind of his nature and where he belongs in some ways, or at least by my reading, and I did like that. I like what that adds to the discussion. I like what that adds to this character. Another facet of this omnibus I thought was interesting is they had had a recolored version of the first Iron Fist story or appearance, where we have his origin story, and it's kind of retold with modern colors. I think that was a really fun inclusion in this book for fans that maybe haven't read that or haven't checked out the Danny Rand early years omnibus. It's a great way to just get the origin of this character, but it is smacked kind of in the middle of this collection, which I thought was fascinating, but it was still fun, and it kind of fit with the overall theme of these different Iron Fist histories and chapters and little one-shots we get throughout the book. Fast forwarding a little bit, I want to talk about some of the Immortal weapons content. Once Brubaker and Fraction left the book, we still continued on, and one of the big points that I liked was we started to get more into the Immortal weapons. Those characters, a lot of them come to Earth in New York, and some of them help Danny here and there. We have a storyline too where Danny finds out that no Iron Fist has lived past, I think, 33, and he discovers this, as the audience does, on his 33rd birthday. We have this kind of weird mystical kind of evil assassin character that always comes out and destroys Iron Fists. Thought this was really fun. We have him kind of separated from some of his powers for a bit, and we get to see kind of his crew at home, like Luke Cage and Misty Knight, along with some of these Immortal weapons, try to help save him and kind of be there for him. I liked all of that. Another thing they have going on with this book is this mythical, I think, 8th city. There's basically one city, one mythical city that's never been found, that was lost to the ages. And it's this big conspiracy, and ultimately we have Danny Rand, the Immortal Iron Fist, teaming up with the Immortal weapons and finding this city. They get thrown in there, and we find that it's kind of a hell dimension that's basically ruled over by this horrible dictator. They're all imprisoned and forced to fight in kind of a gladiator arena. This was a really, really fun story arc as well, I thought. We have him caged in a jail next to who he believes is the first Iron Fist that we find out was exiled into this dimension. And things have a lot of twists and turns here. I won't spoil everything, but we do have a kind of break out of this jail dimension and try to get back home, stop the evil. And this was a really fun arc too. And this was, I think, the last like proper arc of the series. And then the book kind of ends for the most part with the Immortal Weapons miniseries, along with the sketchbook and a couple of random issues, odds and ends. That kind of bit of the I Am an Avenger. Anyway, we have kind of that as the last main arc. The Immortal Weapons actual miniseries, each issue follows one of the Immortal Weapons. We get kind of their history or a defining chapter in their life. This is a really fun feature for those that, like myself, really like these characters from earlier on in the run. We get a lot of great depth and exploration, and in some cases, origin story for these characters. I really think this was a wonderful book. I'm so happy I waited and got the Iron Fist with the Immortal Weapons content all in one omnibus. I'm sure the other omnibus is great. Maybe if you just wanted some of the strongest material in this greater run or two, maybe that first omnibus printing is the way to go. But for me, who kind of wants it all, this was a great omnibus. I'm so happy that Marvel released this more expanded edition, and I had a blast with it. This is some of the smaller supplementary content we have after the Immortal Weapons miniseries. Like I said, we have little clips or little small things that kind of human stories that follow Danny Rand for the most part. But yeah, that's the kind of the greater sense of this book. We have some final developments for the relationship between Misty Knight and Danny Rand for this book. But yeah, really good stuff here. At the back of the omnibus, we do get a wealth of extras that I was just delighted to see. We get script pages, we get variant covers, we get sketches, reprints of original art. We do have that Immortal Weapons sketchbook that kind of gives us bios on some of the Immortal Weapons, some more great art. Again, just a wealth of extras here, and for a run I actually really enjoyed. I was so just excited to see this at the back of the book. So many extras. I was delighted. A very, very fun and comprehensive omnibus. You'll actually see bits of that Immortal Weapons sketchbook here in a moment. But yeah, just really good stuff here. I really loved how this book was mapped. I think everything made total sense. Like I said, it's perfect for new readers or longtime fans of Iron Fist that are looking for a more expanded lore for this titular character. I really enjoyed it. I think that Iron Fist is an unsung hero in the Marvel Universe, and I could see why this is considered the definitive collection. And now, the grade. For easily one of my favorite one-and-done comprehensive omnibuses in recent years, the Comic Book Report is happy to give the Immortal Iron Fist and the Immortal Weapons omnibus an A-. This was a wonderful, fantasy-laden martial arts epic that had elements of sort of high drama, crime, conspiracy, vigilantism, and more. We had so many terrific creators on this book, including Ed Brubaker, Matt Fraction, David Aja, and so many other artists I can name as well, and writers. It's really just such a jaw-dropping amount of content, and I was just riveted. The wealth of extras brought a smile to my face, and this is a book I know I'll return to in different ways throughout the years as time allows. A really fun run. Honestly, I think it's one of the modern definitive Marvel runs I've read in my mind. Great for new and returning readers. Definitely don't miss out on the Immortal Iron Fist. But that's just my opinion. I'd love to hear yours in the comments. Have you read this run on Iron Fist? Do you have this omnibus? Do you have the old omnibus? What do you think of these characters? I'd love to hear all that and more in the comments, and thank you all for watching. Until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your like, that comment we talked about, and maybe share this video with a friend. Thank you so much. Bye.